All right. So, Tati, Gartner just kind of took the top off of a subject that I think we've been talking about for at least 6 months, but they did so in a super tangible, quantifiable way. And I'm sure I'm going to butcher this, but I went through it at length in newsletter number 40. But basically, what Gartner said in so many words was 99% of the technology vendors that they analyzed using a very rigid and smart framework and criteria that have claimed to be AI agent this, agent that, yada yada, effectively are not, right? And there's their words, not mine. They're referring to it as agent washing, right? Which we think is really funny because we've more or less been talking about this. So I want to just kind of break it down for the audience real quick and then pass it to you to react. But there's a lot of different ways to describe what an agent is or isn't. But the easiest way, I think, in my mind, careful what you ask for, is it's like the next generation of a software application. But the difference here is that it is end to end able to operate in an autonomous manner. Right. So it's able to think, it's able to iterate, it's able to read and react, it's able to take actions, all these types of things. Right. And so the challenge with bringing that into the real world is that you got to really modernize some really, important pieces of infrastructure, right? Data infrastructure, tech infrastructure, you name it, to make sure that data sets are all available, to each other in a way that historically they haven't been, which is silos. Then you got to introduce the brain, right, which is the horsepower, the LLMs, the frontier models, and plug those in the right way. And if you're fortunate enough to have a rock star like Harrison Chase, Jacob Lee, and the incredibly talented folks at LangChain, you got yourself a chassis, all that stuff plugs in, orchestration layer. Now all of a sudden, you've got the ability as a domain expert, hello Tati, to determine more or less where do we want to point those autonomous agents to either augment human workflows to make us, way more productive, give us 5 to 10x horsepower, or maybe take care of some things that are just kind of not really, they're important, but they're tedious and we'd rather focus on other things, right? So that's the essence of what an agent more or less is. And so Gartner has revealed in quantifiable numbers, which is nice because, better than Alec just with his, overly verbose opinion about these things, that 99% of the vendors they evaluated were essentially fake. Their words, not mine. And so it's a long-winded wind up, 3 minutes of context. Tati, you get the microphone now. So how do you feel and where does your mind go when you hear about all this stuff in light of everything we've been talking about?
Well, first, I was very excited to see this come out because it is true. And folks can go back to our YouTube channel and see that we've been talking about this. We've been saying AI washing instead of agentic washing, but we've been saying that very same thing that we know that folks are using. Let me start with this. Too many firms right now that are selling services are optimized for fog.
Yes.
They're using vague language. They have these really inflated timelines. They have
great jazz hands. A lot of this.
Hands, decks of buzzwords. It's
Trust
jargon, strategery everywhere. What's getting sold as strategy is often just recycle vocabulary, and worse is recycle talking points that we're hearing. And sometimes I'm watching things and my hand is like this, or I'm like this watching something. I'm like, I can't believe this is, folks are still, I'm stunned about how so many of the so-called experts are out there repeating those same lines of AI is going to change everything and AI will not take your job if you know how to use it. It's not insight, it's noise. It's just noise. And what I love about this report, and we love data, I love data, is that it quantifies it. It really tells us what we've been sensing, what we've been seeing all along is there. It's not just our opinion. It's the fact. So the thing is that there's a lot of noise, a lot of confusion. Confusion is really expensive. Now you have the McKinsey report, and it built, and I recommend for everyone to take a look at that. There's some really, really interesting, we're not going to get super deep into numbers, but there's some really interesting hard data on this. But the reality is also that, some of the most trusted names out there in giving AI consultancy and advice are the ones that are mostly profiting from this confusion. We've said this before, I'll say it again. If someone's selling you a 24-month roadmap, run. If they tell you their tool is the answer to all your problems, you run even faster. So I say the real work is not, we've been saying this all along, but I'll say it again, it's about orchestration. It's just what you said. It's about orchestration. It's about clarity. It's about having trusted, agnostic expertise that can translate that complexity of your business and those gaps into real action, and without the theater, without the jazz hands, because I think that's the main piece there. So what I would say, one of the things that really is exciting for me is how, the work we've been doing with Aurora is guiding teams, and has been guiding teams towards real impact. So it's no labs, it's not a 12-month plan. It's a few high impact use cases. We deliver quickly, we prove value, and we move on. That's what, whether you're working with us or with someone else, that's what should be happening. The focus on it goes all the way back as an operator, it goes all the way back to your operations. You focus on judgment gaps and not on feature gaps. So you have to be working towards what are the decisions that an agent can make before you need to escalate it. You gotta build for that. You gotta build on top of that. You have to design. We talk about governance a lot. We advise on governance. You have to design autonomy, but with those guardrails baked in. And you have, lastly, to embed that feedback faster than the controls, right? So it's really important to continue to do that. And I think that the as an operator, the three things that I would say that matter the most to me, one is that you're going to see a real operational gain. When you look at what you refer back with Gartner and also in the McKinsey report, vast majority of these actions and these agents, so-called agents, they're fake agents, there's no profit, there's no return, there's no real value that's being added. So one, these cases should be bringing you immediate value, almost immediate, right? It should be weeks from implementation. Then again, it's not, you got to move from problem to prototype. It's not months, it's not some big, again, it's folks looking at that framework, old IT framework, and repurposing it for AI, just like they repurpose their decks and their templates. That's not it. And lastly, it's measurable dashboards. Where do you see the ROI? Where are you moving the needle? Where are you not moving the needle? As fast as you can implement this, you should be able to shift this. Again, whoever you're working with should be equipping you to do that. So long answer to your question on how do I see this, but I was very excited to see all of that, and happy to dive into any of the main points there. It's a very, very rich newsletter and the reports that inspired it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think the thing for me, and maybe we'll do this on another video coming up, but I think that if you take a step back, and if you take Gartner's analysis and you think about the implications for how many entities, whether it be the organizations, the technology vendors, the advisors, and so on and so forth, that are maybe chasing the wrong thing. Imagine if you're in the 1% that isn't. And imagine the value that can create, and then the compound returns by putting in place the systems that actually do enable autonomous digital labor at scale. And that to me is that's what gets me up in the morning every day. And that's where the infinite curiosity kicks in, is we're all going to figure this out. It's just a matter of when. And I think that this report was just staggering. And I've gotten a lot of feedback accordingly. So yeah, please jump in.
But it does not. At the same time, for the folks at 99%, we can argue on the exact number, but let's say it's over 90 for sure on
Easy.
folks
Yeah,
that are
90%.
somewhat unclear, right? Not to say confused, but somewhat unclear on what this does and what it brings and what is an agent and what it's supposed to be doing. And I think 9 out of 10 people I will talk to will not be able to answer that question on the autonomy and on what makes an agent, what does. So some of those concepts and some of those principles are incredibly important to understand at a basic level. But when these reports come out, that creates even more fear. At the same time that it clarifies some things. But if you are already a little bit lost, you're going, why am I looking for the map? The map is wrong too, right? So what? So it's at the same time that it makes you go, all right. I think that the best, if nothing else, you walk away from these few minutes with us today on understanding that it's not the time to throw your hands up and go, well, none of this makes sense anyways, I'm gonna just sit here and wait for the storm to pass. This should do the opposite, even if our tendency at times is to do that and be like, well, let me just see what other people are. This is the time where you get those trusted advisors next to you. This is the time where you start to understand that no one place will offer all of the solutions that you need. And you start to understand what those workflows and what those agents should be doing for your business, not in general, not, in some big, in some big study or whatever your vendor is telling you should be the way to go. You gotta have trusted voices. That 1% needs to be next to you. So this is the time to find the 1%, not to throw your hands up because you were in the 99%.
Totally. Yeah, we'll leave it there, and I think for the next video, maybe we talk about what I'm about to say a little bit, to build on exactly what you just said. Is I think what this reminds us all is two things. One is things have been moving really fast, and it's really hard to keep up, and that's okay, because it sounds like, based on the math, everybody's still kind of at the starting line. So you can just it's all good. To your point, don't get all nervous and worried about it. Just be like, well, the good news is we haven't figured it out, but nobody else has, for the most part, right? Or 9 out of 10 folks. So it's all good. Just as my man Bill Gurley says, whatever you do, just make sure you're always running at it. Right? Run at it, run at it, run at it. Do not run away from it. It will eat you up,
Let's run at it. We are.
That's it. All right, Tati. See you next time.
Cheers.